mounting calls from Europe over its military buildup in Syria. Russia stalks fears announcing planned naval drills in the Mediterranean Sea. The annual Muslim Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia takes a tragic turn as over 700 people are killed in the stampede. And in a historic speech to U.S. Congress, Pope Francis touches on a range of issues, from praising the courage and enduring needed for adversaries to resume dialogue to warning of the threat to the existence of the family.
The news today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. As Russian involvement in the Syrian war deepens and concerns from the West become increasingly loud, it was announced today that Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet U.S. President Barack Obama on Monday of next week at the UN General Assembly in New York. Senior U.S. administration officials said the meeting was a request by the Russian president. EU concern is up as well, with the French and British defense ministers discussing the issue today and calling on Moscow to justify the military buildup. I-24 News correspondent Charles Biblizer takes a deeper look at the historical significance of Russia's re-emergence in the Middle East.
The stakes are taking off in the Middle East as Russian fighter jets are reportedly being deployed by Syrian regime forces to strike Islamic State targets. Moscow's ongoing military buildup in Syria has alarmed the West, in particular the United States, which is leading its own anti-IS coalition in the same confined airspace. But as Russia asserts itself, including announcing planned naval drills in the Mediterranean, a reticent Washington may be backing down. In stark contrast to its initial position,
Assad needs to go.
The U.S., along with other Western countries, has softened its stance.
The last year and a half, we have said that Assad has to go, but how long, what the modality is, that's a decision that has to be made in the context of the Geneva process and negotiations. We've said for some period of time that it doesn't have to be on day one or month one or whatever.
The latest indication is that President Vladimir Putin is content to act unilaterally in Syria, even at the risk of pitting Russia against the U.S. For some, this unfolding dynamic is reminiscent of the Cold War, which played out in full force in the Middle East. The Yom Kippur Holy Day, marked by Jews this week, offers a prime example. On that day in 1973, both Egypt and Syria, backed by the USSR, launched a surprise attack on Israel, which was aligned with the U.S. During the three-week conflict, both superpowers conducted massive resupply efforts to their respective allies, effectively fueling the fighting. An estimated 2,000 Soviet personnel were stationed in Syria and thousands more in Egypt. Significantly, there were multiple direct confrontations between Israeli and Soviet forces. The USSR at one point threatened to fully enter the war, which would have pressed Washington's hand. Over the next decade, though, things would change dramatically. Egypt's exit from the USSR's orbit led to the emergence of the US as the region's dominant foreign power. Following its total collapse in 1991, Soviet influence in the Middle East evaporated, save for a small military outpost in Tartus, Syria. Today, that very port is being expanded and reinforced, threatening to upend the long-standing regional order. Historical precedent perhaps partially accounts for the West's willingness to defer to Russia. It also explains Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trip to Moscow this week, where he agreed to a mechanism with Putin by which to coordinate the respective military activities in Syria. The 4-year-long war there has killed more than 250,000 people and displaced some 10 million others. The question now is whether Syria, as it did in the past, will again act as the cauldron in which East-West tensions boil over into a new Cold War.
And with me right now here in the studio is correspondent Charles Biblizer. Good evening.
Hi, Lucy.
So, Charles, you know, are we headed to another Cold War, or is it just, you know, one step that Russia is trying to understand, trying to feel the Middle East, and then when it will get what it wants, it will go back?
Well, Russia is certainly taking baby steps in the Middle East, but let's not forget, it already tested the West in the Ukraine, and the West did very little to stop Putin from gobbling up a former satellite there. So now he's testing even further. It's kind of like a child to see how far he can go. But there needs to be a disciplinarian. And over the past 3.5 decades since the collapse of the USSR, the United States has been the primary power and disciplinarian in the region.
But it's amazing that you're saying that, because he did the same thing in Crimea, he did the same thing in Ukraine, and it seems that he's saying, okay, it worked for me in my region, maybe it can work also in the Middle East.
Absolutely. And you hear all these voices of concern stemming from the West. Today we saw it from NATO, we saw it from various European countries, we've seen it from Obama and Kerry. The question is, how is concern going to translate into action? Basically, Syria has become a cauldron, as I said there, and you have all these dynamic forces. You have Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Unless the U.S. starts leading from the front as opposed from behind, it really sets the stage for some kind of international incident. And when you allow this power vacuum to prevail, someone's going to come in and fill it.
And of course, Russia got in, just filled the vacuum that the United States left. But again, you know, the next question will be, can really Russia defeat ultimately the United States? You know, after all the history, after everything that we're seeing, can they really get, or do they understand at the end of the day, and this is why Vladimir Putin asked this meeting with the United States president, that they cannot actually beat the United States at the end of the day?
There's no question. You have we still live in a unipolar world that's dominated by the U.S. Its economy, its military. You can't even compare Russia to the United States. The Russian economy has been hit very hard by the drop of oil. While it's building up its military in particular, it doesn't pose an existential threat to the United States. But that being said, you have to defend your interests even if you're a greater power. And if you're not going to defend your interests, someone is going to come in and it's going to occupy the space that you're giving for them.
Yeah, but we don't understand exactly what are the interests of the United States in the region, or we do understand, and they are getting a little bit mixed up with the interest that the United States has in the Middle East. But it seems that Vladimir Putin has really clear plan of what the interest, what he wants, and what he's going to get from him getting into the Middle East.
Well, it's okay. So you have two opposite fields here. You have a lot of people who are accusing the Obama administration of withdrawing from the Middle East, and then at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have a lot of people who are saying that Russia's trying to rebuild the Soviet empire. So instead of clashing in places like Syria, the U.S. now is trying to divulge a lot of responsibility over to Russia that it previously would have had. So the question is now, is at what point do you reach a new equilibrium in the region? So if the U.S. is going to withdraw to a certain extent, it's only, one can only anticipate that Russia and other powers such as Iran are going to come and occupy the vacuum. The problem is to the extent, to date, the U.S. has been a positive influence, a lot larger than certain other bad actors, as we've seen with the proxy wars going on right now. So this could become very messy unless some kind of détente is reached.
Some people will disagree with you about the positive influence in the Middle East.
Let's see how Russia did back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yes, definitely. Charles Bibleser, thank you very, very much for this. Thank you. More than 1.5 billion Muslims are celebrating Eid al-Adha today, the holiday of sacrifice, symbolizing Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son under God's request in the holy book of the Quran. But in Saudi Arabia, where millions made their way for pilgrimage, disaster struck as hundreds were killed in a stampede. Ayman Siksik has more.
Eid al-Adha, the feast of the sacrifice, the second of the two central Muslim holidays, began Thursday, attracting a record number of worshippers to Saudi Arabia. But just outside the holy Muslim city of Mecca, over 700 pilgrims were killed in the worst stampede in nearly a decade. The stampede broke out during the symbolic stoning of the devil ritual. They came here to fulfill Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. But a consistently growing number of pilgrims every year means stampedes and suffocation have become a real hazard.
The accident, as you know, was caused by overcrowding and also by pilgrims not following the movement instructions of the security and the ministry. However, this is God's will.
This is not the first time such an incident has occurred. In 1990, over 1,400 pilgrims were killed in Mina in a similar stampede. And as recently as 2006, more than 340 others were crushed during the pilgrimage.
We were coming back from the Jamarat, and on the way back I met my husband, and he was going to the Jamarat. The pilgrims began pushing each other, and they pushed people to the ground. I was about to die.
Across the holy site of Mecca and its surroundings, 7,000 CCTV cameras are set up for round-the-clock surveillance. The kingdom's main concern is terrorism, fearing the holy site would become a target for the warring factions in Islam. Muslims in Syria know this all too well. Many Syrian refugees who fled the war in their homeland ended up here in Lebanon. But today, they had little to celebrate.
We're spending the Eid here in our homes. We have nothing and brought nothing for the occasion. Eid here is normal, just like any other day. Nothing special.
War and violence are also still prevalent in Afghanistan, where the large Muslim population today hoped for peace, another emblem of the Muslim holiday.
I'm from the Republic of Yemen, but I live in Saudi Arabia, and I wish my family would be able to stay in Yemen and that their pain would be decreased, as well as the attacks on our country.
For many, this year's holiday is marred by a crisis for the Muslim faith, which precedes today's disaster. The Feast of the Sacrifice finds Muslims suffering mass dispersion and war across the Arab world, for all of whom Mecca is the last prayer for safety.
And with me right now here in the studio is correspondent Ayman Siksa. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Ayman, this year and the year before, these two holidays, Yom Kippur and Eid al-Adha, came together. And this has a special meaning for the Muslim world and the Jewish world.
That's right. And in Israel, of course, this was a source of a lot of apprehension. We were hearing security forces saying they're prepared for tensions, for clashes. And this is because, of course, the customs of the two holidays are so different. In Yom Kippur, it's all about forgiveness, about calm, about being alone, fasting and being one with God. And Eid al-Adha is about celebration and food, as we know.
Yes.
And being with the community and your family. So it is every year very, very worrying whether one religion would be disrespectful of the other. This hasn't happened
for 2 years.
For 2 years now, and I think that goes a lot to say about the society in Israel.
Yeah, we're all the time criticizing ourselves and saying how we're not tolerant to each other, but somehow in this day, it seems that everybody is actually can have a little bit of respect to one another and to the religion of the other.
Which just goes to show you, I mean, Israeli society is full of surprises all the time. But you know, it does remind us of the story of the sacrifice in the Bible and in the Quran, where Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son. Now, there is, of course, controversy over which son it is, but we're missing the point if we focus on that. Because as we know in the Holy Scripture, he succeeded this test. He was almost about to sacrifice his son for the love of God. And I think what these holidays show us is, especially in these times, how much are we willing to sacrifice now for having peace, for having understanding with one another, especially at this extremely tense time in Israel, and of course for Islam in general across the Arab world.
Are we willing to sacrifice the comfortable life that we're living in order for us to get to peace, or to get to love, or to get to a little bit of calm in our lives? أيمن سكسة، كل عام وأنت بخير. كل سنة
كل عام وأنت بخير، Lucy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, and the Temple Mount, also known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, is among the holiest sites to both Judaism and Islam and has been at the center of recent violence in Jerusalem. I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari was there earlier this week and got a rare close-up glimpse of the tense situation at the site, the beating heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
The Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, or Noble Sanctuary. It is holy to both Jews and Muslims, and in recent weeks, it's again been the focal point of violence and tension between the citizens of Jerusalem. In the days leading up to the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, some religious Jews make a tradition of ascending to the Temple Mount, which also houses the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But most rabbis forbid the entrance of Jews to the compound on religious grounds, and this group was debating the point up until the last minute. Just before entering, they prayed, overlooking the Western Wall, as the Muslim Waqf authorities do not allow non-Muslim prayers on the compound itself. As we entered, we immediately saw a group of Waqf officials sitting near the gate. The Waqf is the Muslim council charged with custodianship of the compound, as per the delicate status quo. Journalists aren't allowed in. Okay. We had to film this footage with cell phones. A professional television camera would have been out of the question. At first, we attempted to tour the compound alone. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the building at the center of tensions here on the Mount. Damage to the doors sustained during the recent clashes is still visible. Last week, Palestinian youths barricaded themselves within the Al-Aqsa Mosque itself and clashed with Israeli police. Things were not as violent this week. Sitting outside the building were a group of Muslim women who belong to the organization known as the Murabitat, meaning the Sentinels. They see themselves as protectors of the mosque, and they raise their voices whenever religious Jews pass by. 2 weeks ago, the Israeli defense minister declared the group illegal. But it continues its activities within eyesight of Israeli police. The visits of Jews to the Mount are limited, but restrictions are occasionally placed on Muslim visits to the compound as well. During the Yom Kippur holiday, the entrance of Muslim males under 40 was prohibited, and there were complaints while we were there as well.
They detained some girls over there and took their ID cards. They stopped them there and didn't let them in.
After a few minutes, our cell phone cameras aroused the suspicions of the Waqf officials, who demanded we join a group of religious Jews. The men were escorted by a contingent of armed Israeli police, but also by Palestinian Waqf officials, seen here in the light blue shirts. The tension was palpable, a standoff, and one wrong word, such as a prayer, could ignite the situation. Our escorts remained suspicious and even filmed us filming them. As the group walked around the compound, they were heeded by the calls of the Murabitun, the male version of the Murabitat, who spotted their coming. During the tour, the authorities were noticeably nervous and eager to get things over with as quickly and as painlessly as possible, with no questions asked, both Israelis and Palestinians. As the Jewish men reached the end of the tour near the Dome of the Rock, they exited the compound, walking backwards, refusing to turn their backs on the traditional site of the Jewish temples. Once outside, they again prayed and engaged in a ritual dance, their visit completed without major incidents.
Yes, and with me right now here in the studio is correspondent Shai Ben-Ari. Good evening.
Good evening.
How did you feel as a Jewish man going to Al-Aqsa Mosque and getting into the Temple Mount? And it is supposed to be a place of open religion. It is supposed to be the place where you are not supposed to be separated because of who you are. Right. And you get in, and all eyes are on you, and everybody's suspicious only because you're a Jew.
Right. In our special situation, you could say they were suspicious also because they suspected us of being journalists, which we are. We didn't openly reveal ourselves to be journalists, but that is what we were and still are. And of course, this was a very special situation for me. Personally, I can say that I have a very specific interest in the history of the area and the region. I couldn't really focus on my own personal interest here as we had a certain job to do, and the focus was on the technical details, let's say. It was a very complex challenge because we couldn't, as was mentioned in the peace, actually bring in news cameras, television cameras to do the work as we usually do. We had to rely on cell phone cameras, and that was enough to raise the suspicions of both the Waqf and the Israeli authorities, both of whom stopped us on several occasions and asked us all sorts of questions. We had to do a lot of explaining to sort of convince them that we were not journalists. I'm not sure we actually succeeded, but they did eventually let us get on with what we were doing.
Maybe both of them wanted, both sides wanted you to pass a certain message, but let's take you to the Waqf, let's say, the structure. For most of our viewers, they don't understand who are the Waqf exactly, so let's try to explain that.
Again, a very complex situation. We're talking about a very interesting body. Essentially, it derives its authority from the Kingdom of Jordan, basically. Jordan still retains a certain special status on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, despite the fact that the Israeli government considers all of this territory its own. It does recognize the special status of the King of Jordan as the custodian of the Muslim holy places, and is very careful to not trample his authority, and has a lot of respect for it. You can see there are always sort of talks between the Israeli authorities and the Jordanian ones when it comes to tensions on the Temple Mount, and this body basically derives its authority from the Jordanian ones.
You know, it's amazing because there was always some kind of a suggested solution about the Temple Mount, about bringing some kind of an international force, international body that will make the two sides not get in there, or make them get in there in a peaceful way. And at the end of the day, it's Jordan who's maintaining the status quo for both sides, not only for one side. This is very interesting. Shaiban Ari, thank you very, very much for this. This time of year in New York means the General Assembly with leaders and dignitaries descending on the city to make their speeches and make their case. Next week, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will speak, and as Eli Ochenberg explains, much speculation has already surrounded his intentions.
Can be done to break the status quo. What can be done?
To make peace.
Yes, but how?
To go in negotiation. Through negotiations, we can make peace.
Yeah.
We don't have other choices.
No bombshell, but a call for renewed peace talks. That might be the plan for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's UNGA speech next week. After declaring he's going to shake the international diplomatic boat, Abbas clarified to European diplomats that he's not going to announce the cancellation of the Oslo Accords or the demise of the Palestinian Authority, nor is he going to stop security coordination with Israel.
This meeting was open and frank. The President Mahmoud Abbas assured us that he wouldn't question the Oslo Agreement, which was very important to us. He even told us that he was ready to have a meeting in Ramallah with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu without any precondition.
Abbas's speech is already written, according to sources quoted in the Palestinian media, but there might be some changes following his expected meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry prior to his big moment at the UN podium. In this meeting, Abbas will demand Kerry outline the White House's position regarding the non-existent peace process and what is the Obama administration's plan, if there is one. Accordingly, an Israeli source told the Haaretz newspaper Abbas will decide how far he will go in his speech.
I heard more obeying Mahmoud Abbas today. He's trying to favorably answer Benjamin Netanyahu's call for a meeting. He's going to declare it publicly. Mahmoud Abbas being in under a lot of pressures in the territories where he is criticized for being moderate.
But in the meantime, it seems the Palestinian people are not so eager to hear Abbas's declarations. A survey by a Palestinian Study Center reveals that almost two-thirds, 65%, are willing to see Abbas resign. 3 months ago, 44% expressed satisfaction with the Palestinian president's functioning, but now only 38% do. In addition, more than half of the Palestinians no longer support the two-state solution, while 48% still believe in that goal. Only 3 months ago, the numbers were opposite, 48% against and 51% in favor of the two-state solution. The survey further reveals that if elections were held now, 35% would vote for Hamas and the same number would vote for Abbas's Fatah party, a drop of 4% in the last 3 months. If that's not enough to acknowledge the growing frustration among Palestinians, only 29% said they believe in negotiation as the most effective way to solve the conflict, while 42% believe in a violent uprising, an increase of 6% in 3 months. At last, 78% of the people questioned said the chances for the establishment of a Palestinian state within the next 5 years are between low to non-existent. With that in mind, and while the Palestinian flag waves at the entrance for the first time, the Palestinian president will arrive at the UN headquarters next week. There, he will try to make a mark on the international community and, maybe more importantly, regain the confidence of his people.
And with me right now here in the studio is diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, if he is not planning to resign, if he is not planning to back down from the Oslo Accords, what is he planning to sing and dance?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure he will be so good at that. But you need to understand that there's great frustration on Abbas's side regarding the Oslo Accords. He does not want to raise hell and cancel them, but he says that he claims that if Israel will continue to refuse to go back to the negotiating table, he will be left with no other choice. And as we've heard in the report, he had a meeting earlier this week with 4 former Israeli ambassadors to Paris, and during this meeting he said that in the meantime, you ask what is he doing? He's sending messages to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu through messengers. 2 months ago it was Minister Silvan Shalom, and only last week it was former Israeli Minister Meir Shitrit.
Try to explain to me this, because when Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to congratulate for Eid al-Fitr just after Ramadan, he knew the phone number of Mahmoud Abbas to pick up and tell him happy holiday. How come now Mahmoud Abbas needs to meet former ambassadors to pass a message to Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, these two are dancing a very weird tango. We've heard both of them saying they are willing to meet, but nothing happens. And as we've heard one of the former ambassadors, he says that Abbas will soon publicly declare his willingness to meet once again Benjamin Netanyahu. But also, as mentioned, Abbas is very much willing to hear what the U.S. has to say about the stalled peace process. And on the sidelines of the UNGA, next week we are expected to see a meeting of quartet members, the US, Russia, the EU, and the UN, alongside Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and they too will discuss what are they going to do with the peace process.
So if we are looking at right now the specific situation, and now the situation of Mahmoud Abbas is not that good, because we just saw protests against Mahmoud Abbas. People are actually calling for him to resign.
Yes, Israel is far from being his only problem. Even in his home base, the West Bank, people are losing faith in him. We see a rising popularity of Hamas and its leaders on the expense of Abbas. And in general, the Palestinian people are very much frustrated. They do not believe in their leaders. They do not believe that the PA is taking care of them as much as they wanted to, and they do not believe in any solution. If you're looking for a bit of hope, 2/3 of the Palestinian people say they do believe in the indirect negotiations between Hamas and Israel, but you will be disappointed because they do not believe it will bear fruits. So.
It's amazing, because I asked if he's going to dance and sing, and you just said that they have like a strange dance. Maybe he's going to teach Benjamin Netanyahu new moves.
They'll do a duet,
on
maybe.
the stage. Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much for this. We're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and then I'll be back, not dancing, but with the second part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Facing mountain calls from Europe over its military buildup in Syria, Russia stalks fears, announcing planned naval drills in the Mediterranean Sea. The annual Muslim Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia takes a tragic turn as over 700 people are killed in a stampede. And in a historic speech to U.S. Congress, Pope Francis touches on a range of issues, from praising the courage and enduring needed for adversaries to resume dialogue, to warning of the threat to the existence of the family. Welcome Welcome back to the news today. In the midst of his U.S. visit, Pope Francis addressed the U.S. Congress today, touching on a range of issues. He praised the, quote, courage and daring required for adversaries to resume dialogue, largely seen as a reference to the warming of the ties between the U.S. and Iran and the U.S. and Cuba. The pontiff also urged Congress to aid refugees amid the current crisis, to combat climate change, and spoke of what he called the threat to the family itself. Here's a bit of what he had to say on immigration.
We must not be taken aback by the numbers, but rather view them as persons, seeing their faces and listening to their stories, trying to respond as best we can to their situation, to respond in a way which is always human, just, and fraternal. We need to avoid a common temptation now awaits to discard whatever proves troublesome.
Yes, and after D.C., Pope Francis, of course, heads to New York, where he'll speak at the General Assembly on Friday. Daniel Ziri has more on what's expected.
New York is ready to welcome the Pope. Pope Francis is set to arrive to the city on Thursday evening local time as part of his first trip to the United States, which began in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday.
As the son of an immigrant family, I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
The pontiff will only be in New York City for some 40 hours, but his schedule is fully packed. Upon arrival on Thursday night, he will hold an evening prayer service at the famous St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue, a true monument of Manhattan, where thousands of people are expected to gather. The next day will be the busiest, however. The Pope will begin his Friday at 8:30 a.m. with his much-awaited address at the United Nations General Assembly, a speech which is expected to focus on themes such as poverty, social justice, climate change, and even the current refugee crisis. The next stop will be downtown Manhattan at the 9/11 Memorial, where he will pay his respects to the 3,000 victims of the attacks on the World Trade Center. And later, Francis will be visiting a school in East Harlem and parading through thousands of people in Central Park before the final event on his schedule, a Mass at Madison Square Garden. Although some New Yorkers are not looking forward to blocked streets and traffic jams, others feel the pontiff's visit is a historic moment.
I think it's an extraordinary event. I think it's more than the other papal visits, because this Pope seems to be tackling issues outside of the normal realm of the papacy, like climate change and things. So I think across the board, people of all faiths will probably be welcoming him.
The papal visit to New York comes just 3 days before the beginning of the largest ever gathering of world leaders at the United Nations. With security as a main concern, NYPD has been preparing for every scenario.
And correspondent Daniel Ziri joins us from New York. So, Daniel, it seems that you can definitely feel that the Pope is coming to town in New York City.
Yes, good evening, Lucy. Well, in the next couple of days, New York City is going to be faced with its biggest security challenge yet. And the reason for that is not just the Pope's visit, which will begin tomorrow afternoon, but also because the Pope's visit comes at a time where 200 world leaders are making their way here to New York to take part in the debate of the General Assembly at the United Nations. So definitely a double security challenge for NYPD and security FBI here, for example, who have been collaborating on the security effort. I have to say that they are preparing. They have been preparing for weeks now. Tens of thousands of NYPD officers are going to be deployed all throughout the city, especially in the sites and the zones where the Pope is scheduled to make appearances throughout his visit in New York City.
800 security cameras are going to be monitored at all times to make sure everything goes very smoothly around the Pope. And of course, the streets around the sites where the Pope is going to be stopping, well, are going to be blocked, which makes a lot of people mad because this is going to cause major traffic in New York City. By the way, New Yorkers have been advised not to take any above ground transportation in those few days. Actually, only the subway is sort of allowed by NYPD. That's the advice that they've been giving to New Yorkers. Just in terms of the Pope, we know from his previous international trips and visits that he really likes to feel close to the people, close to the crowd, to touch them even. And so he could go off script anytime as he pleases. And well, security forces in New York are just going to have to deal with it.
Yes, one thing that I learned in New York is never ever drive a car. Always take the subway. And with Europe still struggling to deal with the influx of migrants and refugees, European Union leaders agreed early today to mount a broader, more comprehensive response to the crisis. That means more money to aid refugees in the Middle East and toughening EU border controls. Also today, the governors of Germany's 16 states are in Berlin today to meet with Chancellor Angela Merkel on how to manage the crisis there, where hundreds of thousands of people have already been taken in over the past. And Uri Shapira has more on the East-West divide over taking in refugees.
The migrant crisis in Europe continues to entangle and appears a battle between Eastern and Western European countries, a dispute that perhaps raises bad memories from the past. One example would be the trade battle between Croatia and its neighbor Serbia. The two countries imposed sanctions on each other, causing traffic chaos in the borders, after Croatia demanded Serbia stop directing tens of thousands of migrants to its frontier and instead send them back to Hungary. This may be the lowest ebb in the relations since the overthrow of Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic in 2000.
My message is very clear, open this route to Horgosh, which is prepared. It is not necessary, to make this situation with refugees. They don't need to come in Croatia, and then we are transporting them to Hungary.
Meanwhile, the division between East and West continues in Brussels. Earlier this week, the European Union approved a plan to disperse 120,000 refugees across the bloc. Leaders of the bloc also agreed on $1 billion of emergency aid to Syrian refugees. But despite the agreement, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is still concerned about the situation.
I'm deeply convinced that what Europe needs is not just selective relocation of this kind, but much more a durable process for fairly distributing refugees among member states.
The question now in Europe is what policy to impose on this huge wave of migrants, as the countries do not see eye to eye on whether to accept the migrants and, most importantly, how. European Council President Donald Tusk said Wednesday the biggest influx of migrants is still ahead.
Now the focus should be on the proper protection of our external borders and on external assistance to refugees and the countries in our neighborhood.
Now, without a clear and sharp consensus between East and West, thousands of migrants are still stuck in between the borders.
And with me right now is Mr. Avi Pazner, former Israeli ambassador to France. Ambassador Pazner, thank you very much for coming.
Good evening, Lucy. Thank you.
So, Ambassador Pazner, we're watching right now how Europe is dividing just between the East and the West about the way that it's seeing this entire crisis. Maybe it's coming because Europe was not ready to this amount of refugees coming in. But Germany should know a little bit better because Germany was divided between East and West. Germany should know what it means when you should expect or accept to your own society somebody who is a little bit different.
You're absolutely right, Lucy. You know that Europe is not tackling the problem at all because what they're tackling is 120,000 people, okay? And these 120,000 people cause the kind of division you talk about. Imagine when the real flow of refugees will come, and it will come, and there will be hundreds of thousands and millions, because if you don't solve the situation in Syria, in Libya, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Mali, they will continue to come, okay? They will continue to come because the doors of Europe are now open. So the differences are very deep. Germany needs manpower. So Germany opened its gate, but also...
Until when? Until when
exactly.
it can open the gates, and until when it can just handle the burden alone without having counterparts in the East.
I will exactly tell you until when. Until they have about 1 million people. 1 million, okay? Because they need that manpower. You know, Europe has no growth in terms of population. Not Europe, Germany. They need those people. They need 800,000 immigrants. But once they will have the 800s or the million immigrants, there will be inside Germany a reaction.
You know, but Ambassador Pesner, you know, unfortunately, we are living today the lives that we are experiencing and seeing that history repeats itself. And it seems that history is repeating itself in Europe as well. And learning from history, it didn't end up good at the end of the road. And it seems that the leaders today are aiming to the same direction.
Some of them,
50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, some of them. Look at Hungary, for example. Look at the behavior of Hungary, okay? We have seen the pictures, what Hungary does. It's terrible, you know? But not all countries are behaving like that. Germany is not behaving like that. France is not behaving like that. But they are not tackling the problem, because the real problem is you have to find a solution in the countries of origin. Because if you don't find a solution, the refugees will keep on coming. And you say we are repeating the mistake.
And
yes,
at the same time,
but this is very human. We are repeating mistakes.
And at the same time, you need to also handle some kind of a political situation where you're seeing that the political map and the political views in Europe are more shifting to the right than they're shifting to the left. And this is not helping the immigration crisis at all.
It's not helping immigration, it's not helping Europe. I mean, I think it is worrying to see what's happening in the big countries of Europe. Look at France, for example, with the Front National. People are speaking about Marine Le Pen as being maybe the next president of France. I mean, it is worrying, you know, but Europe has shown time and over again that it is not able to tackle real problems. And this is the biggest problem they have since World War II, okay? And still, it's not as big as it will become big, okay? So I think that unless they do something real to tackle the problems in Libya, in Syria, in Afghanistan, to help the population stay there, you will see the fallout in Europe.
Yeah, Ambassador Pesner, unfortunately, I think that we need to sit down and wait for that, because if we will stand and wait, we will be tired. Ambassador Pesner, thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for having me.
And a day after the Volkswagen's CEO resigned over the emission scandal, Germany's Vice Chancellor is expressing hopes that the RA would not turn into a, quote, national debate, as the UK is ordering tests across the auto industry to ensure the scandal is not repeated. Here's more.
German Economy Minister and Vice Chancellor Sigmar Gabriel said on Wednesday that he didn't want the Volkswagen emission scandal to turn into, quote, a general debate about the German economy. A scandal over cheating on U.S. diesel emission tests has engulfed the company, and many Germans worry it will have a domino effect on their businesses, eroding the cherished Made in Germany label.
Obviously, the worries are great, but nevertheless, I would say that we have to be careful that it doesn't turn into a general debate about the German economy.
Gabriel's statements came in the same day Volkswagen chief executive Martin Winterkorn resigned, taking responsibility for the German car maker's emissions rigging scandal.
We see it as our job that this company regains the trust of its customers in all areas. We, as the biggest shareholder, are proud of this company, and we stand behind this company.
I have great respect for his decision. He is taking responsibility for something that happened when he was not chief executive of Volkswagen, but rather at Audi. Despite all that, the case needs to be fully investigated, both by the company and the company's and Germany's cooperation with the U.S. prosecutors and U.S. authorities. We owe that to the Americans.
It seems, however, that Volkswagen's troubles are not limited to the U.S. as other countries, including Italy, France, and South Korea, are opening investigations as throughout the world politicians, regulators, and environmental groups are questioning the legitimacy of the Germany car makers' emissions testing.
And with me right now is the host of the I-24 News Economy magazine, Natalie Ehrlich. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. So, Natalie, what is the latest concerning this affair?
Right. Well, we saw that the CEO resigned today, offering to take responsibility for this manipulation that we saw with the EPA in the U.S., finding that they manipulated the software or the data that came out with this emissions. We also saw that the German transport minister signaled that this kind of manipulation happened not just in the United States, but also in Europe.
So what's the broader impact if we want to look at the future?
Right. Well, today that we saw the European indices all rattled. They all closed in the red here, so they're taking a serious hit from this news. And it's not just Volkswagen, but also other European automakers like BMW are also in the crosshairs now, all getting a lot of press and scrutiny here. And Volkswagen is a very important company, not just for Germany, but it's also Europe's largest automaker. They have 300,000 employees. They have 29 plants with deep ties to the government. If they're not able to contain this crisis, this could have serious repercussions for the German economy. After all, it is a strong exporter, and this is a key product that they're exporting all over the world. So if they can't contain this this crisis, their brand is really suffering.
But if we're watching this really, and we want to see how it will affect the company, can this actually lead to a crisis that Volkswagen cannot actually get out of?
Well, I mean, it's too soon to speculate something like that. I mean, certainly they're going to have damage control experts to contain this crisis. We've seen a number of companies manage to do that in the past. It's too soon to tell here, but in the immediate future, I expect that this stock is going to suffer quite a lot. We saw today that its stock fell down by 3.8%.
Yes, Natalie Ehrlich, thank you very much for this. Thank you. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in the midst of a U.S. tour on Wednesday, stopping by the headquarters of Microsoft, where he met with founder Bill Gates and tech leaders, including Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Apple's Tim Cook, with constantly high concerns over China's hacking of U.S. computers. She told them that China shared a vision of a secure and open cyberspace. His visit will take him to the White House today, where she will attend a working dinner with President Barack Obama, Secretary of State John Kerry, and National Security Advisor Susan Rice. And with me right now here in the studio to take a look back to history is Danny Swibel. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
So, Danny, you're taking us back today to 24th September 1953.
That is correct. So we're talking a lot about right now Russia being very assertive, if not aggressive, in Syria.
Yes.
So I want to roll back to the 1950s. This was a time where U.S. President Eisenhower and his Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, they were the ones who were really pushing to roll back communism because the Korean War had just ended, and they wanted to defend democratic governments. So in turn, on this day, Dulles made a very critical, telling speech that was viewed by some as very confrontational and sarcastic. He says that U.S. will not cringe or become panicky in the face of Soviet nuclear weapons. The U.S. was doubling down on their efforts to push back the Soviets. And in doing so, sometimes the assertive behavior and not leading from behind actually turned to aggression, as we would see later with the U.S. involvement in Vietnam, which instead of trying to go against the Vietnam forces that they thought were part of a Soviet Grandmaster plan, was a very nationalist movement. Did not turn out well. And Iran.
Yeah, you know, we're looking at all these cases in history, and we're seeing that it didn't work out for the best for Russia. And it seems that it's not backing up. It's like it's not backing down from trying and continue trying even right now in the Middle East.
This is the thing with this chatter on both sides. Either you're leading from behind, you're overly aggressive. All these things have very delicate consequences when you get involved. The U.S., because they were helping the British with oil issues in Iran, they helped convince the public, not the public, the government and the CIA in the States to overthrow a democratically elected regime in Iran because they might slip into the communist camp. So sometimes this assertiveness turned into aggressiveness. So Dulles' speech was that he was not going to make concessions that would enhance and increase the arrogance of those who have already extended their rule over 1/3 of the human race. Might is not always right, as we've seen in history. So yes, leading from behind, not a good idea if that is the case, but might is not always right, as we've seen in history several times.
Several times. Danny Swibel, thank you very much for this. Earlier this week, we spoke about online American media site BuzzFeed, a series of videos targeting commonly held stereotypes. One of those is entitled, "I'm Muslim, but..." Here's the clip.
I am Muslim, but I'm not angry.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not forced to wear a headscarf.
I'm Muslim, but I don't wear the hijab.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not dangerous unless we're on the dance floor.
I'm Muslim, but I don't care if you're Shia or Sunni or Sufi. Embrace them all. I'm Muslim, but I'm not a terrorist.
But I'm not a terrorist.
But I'm not a terrorist.
But I'm not stopped at airports because my name is Tom and I'm white.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not Arab. I am Muslim, but I love Jews.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not an immigrant.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not homophobic.
But I'm not prejudiced towards others. But I don't hate America.
I'm Muslim, but I'm not easily offended.
I'm Muslim, but I don't look like one.
I am Muslim, but I had bacon one time on accident. It was good.
I'm Muslim, but I don't scream Allahu Akbar randomly out loud.
Yes, and one of the participants in the video is Ruman Kazi joining us right now from LA. Ruman, good to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So when was the last time that you had bacon as a Muslim?
Oh, it was years. It was years ago.
Really?
I chalk it up to college indiscretion.
Oh, okay. So you're not trying bacon anymore?
No, you know, it happened on accident. It's in the past.
So what made you really participate in this kind of video that really millions and millions of people all around the world saw it and basically are saying, wow, we didn't know that these people look normal.
But I'm not a terrorist.
Well, that's one of the goals, I guess. I mean, it's unfortunate that a video like this needs to be made, but frankly, there aren't very many moderate representations of Islam out there. So when I heard about the project, I was very eager to participate.
You know, I'm wondering because we are here, I'm a Muslim, and I know how it feels to be in Israeli society, but how does it feel like to be in LA? How does it feel today to be a Muslim in LA? If you get a phone call, if you talk in Arabic, do people look at you in a different way?
You know, unfortunately, yes, I still do feel, you feel, I was talking about it the other day, and it's like the air is different, you know? And I think you can say the same about race in America as well. The air is just a little bit different. And it's hard for people who are on the outside of that to really understand because they're not, you know, they don't breathe that same air.
You know, when we first broadcast this video, one of the questions that we asked ourselves, how come more moderate Muslims, more people who are liberal, who are open, who know that Islam is not the way that it's being portrayed in the world, are not coming out and actually screaming, this is not us. This Islam that we're seeing in Daesh, that we're seeing in ISIS, and the extreme Islam that we're seeing is not actually what we are.
Well, I think the big positive about this video is that it was out there on the internet and there was no control. I mean, I think this is a big statement of the freedom of the internet because there are millions of moderate Muslims and we are speaking and we talk and we make ourselves known in our communities and we have leaders speaking on our behalf. But the message only lands on
somehow
a few.
The voices of the minority that you are talking about, that we are talking about, is louder than our voices.
You know, I think so. It's confusing to me what voices get heard, and there's so much noise out there, and there's so much news that I'm not going to sit here and say this thing deserves more attention than that thing, but that's what makes a video like this so powerful, is that the people have decided what they want to hear about. I think so. I mean, 17 million views, you know, that again, it speaks to the power of the internet. There's a freedom of speech there and really free media.
Yes, Ruman Kazi, thank you very, very much for this. Thank you for having a burger with bacon, I think, once in a while.
Yes, it was a chicken sandwich.
Chicken sandwich with bacon. I need to try that, but I hope that my mom is not watching right now. Thank you very much for this. And with me right now, somebody who ate bacon once in his life, Jonathan Raga.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you ate.
Yes, I did.
Good.
Very good.
I never tried bacon.
You should.
I should?
Yeah.
I just tried.
I don't want to offend any religion, of course.
No,
yours, mine, or anyone. But it's tasty. What can I do?
I tried with pepperoni, but pepperoni on pizza. It was really, really good.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay, somebody ate shark in my head.
Talk about sports with a man. Come on.
Sport. Let's talk about 5 goals.
Yes.
5 goals.
We always say records are set to be broken. This, I think. I'm not going to say never, but 5 goals in 9 minutes? Come on! Now, Robert Lewandowski scored them against Wolfsburg. First, Bayern Munich were down 1-0 at halftime, as we see. He came on at halftime. Then, in a space of actually 8 minutes and 58 seconds, he scored 5 goals to lead Bayern Munich.
Is it impressive? It's like...
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Now, let's speak about Wolfsburg, the team that conceded...
It sounded a little bit like...
No. It's not as if it was against an amateur team. Wolfsburg are the current German Cup holders. They beat Bayern Munich recently in the German Super Cup. They came in second in the Bundesliga last season. He scored 5 goals in 9 minutes against them.
Who do you think will buy this player?
The thing is, Bayern Munich are so rich that any offer that they get, they will be able to
get like a better, let's say,
yes, and
contract.
The reactions we saw Arjen Robben saying 4, wow, and then Pep said 5. Amazing.
You have 2 things to speak about before the break. You have Novak Djokovic, and you have something about boxing that you're bringing us, but you have 1 minute.
So first, I'll say quickly, Novak Djokovic, he's a UNICEF ambassador. He's from Serbia, world #1 in tennis. He went to a shelter in Serbia to support the refugees, which is very nice.
Very beautiful.
And finally, we'll do the boxing, because it's very funny. We know that always these press conferences before fights, and this one, Tyson Fury against Klitschko, the fight is this weekend. This is how he came, as Batman.
What?
Yes, I'm Batman. I'm going to knock you out. And then he put a whole show. That's what this guy did. Tyson Fury, that's the way he gets prepared. And yes, there's a whole show there. He kills the bad guy. And yeah.
Jonathan, you know my dream.
Yes?
I have a dream that you will get into the studio one day as Superman.
With bacon.
With bacon. Jonathan, Superman.
I will be Superman one day or not.
Thank you very much. And we're going out for a small break and update from our news desk. And then we will be back for the 3rd part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Super. Welcome back to the news today, and right now with me it's this time of the week with the Professor of Political Science, Dr. Hani Zubaydah, who I'm not going to address today.
Okay,
so you can leave the studio. And also correspondent Eli Ochenberg, good evening.
Good evening.
No, not you. Eli.
Yes.
You know what you did. Eli, let's talk about the police. Israel. It's been the Yom Kippur of the Israeli police.
Yes, it was a short week, but a lot have happened, and I have to say I'm sorry, but Honey was right.
Okay,
Honey was right.
Why? Why
okay,
you just
so we've been talking about the saga of electing a new Israeli chief of police for a while now. There were a lot of problems with that, and a few weeks ago, the Interior Minister, Gilad Erdan, chose a candidate he wanted to become the Israeli chief, former military man Gal Hirsch. But since then, a lot have happened. Many people raised their uproar against this nomination, especially in the police, former chief of police that were very mad that he chose someone from the outside and not from the inside of the police. And today it's done. He's not going to be the chief of police.
Who is Gal Hirsch? For our viewers abroad who don't understand, what is the problem to bring somebody from the outside, to put him and maybe he's qualified to be the right guy for the job. What is the problem?
All right, so Gal Hirsch is probably one of the most well-known military officers in the Second Lebanon War. He was in charge of the Golan Heights entire brigade during the last war, in which there were several mishaps. The first one, of course, was the kidnapping of the soldiers, which was under his control. Now, Gal Hirsch, during that war, knew that he was going to be standing in front of a national committee, national investigation committee. He knew that. When he went to the committee, he said a few things. He left the committee. He was charged of several items. Then immediately thereafter, because a lot of politicians were also charged in front of the committee, they formed a new committee, which basically cleared all of them, including him. But he left the military with a huge bang, and he was one of the people that were supposedly in the run for the chief of staff. He sat outside the military for a few years, and this was the nomination by Gilad Ardan. A few issues from the grapevine. Gilad Ardan interviewed 20 nominees to the chief of police.
So these were the people that he, let's say, in one way or another, Gal Hirsch indicated that were involved in the fact that he was not picked up for the job?
Gal Hirsch was one of the 20. And several people said no from the get-go. Gal Hirsch said, yes, I will take that upon me. He was one of the top 5 nominees by Gilad Ardan. However, people told Gilad Ardan that there might be an issue with Gal Hirsch. First issue was the inner police issue. Police officers do not like somebody coming from the outside into their system. And the second issue was the issue of Gal Hirsch's current occupation.
Okay, but this is not the only problems that the government faced with this week. Another bad nominations, let's say, or controversial nominations being made by the Prime Minister or by the Foreign Office, and it was not accepted, let's say, in a warm way or in a warm welcome.
To say the least. Yes, so we've seen in the last few weeks a few nominations of Israeli ambassadors abroad, and the process is like that. The Israeli government and the Israeli Foreign Ministry elects the potential ambassadors. Then they send the lists of names to the foreign governments, and after they receive a tentative approval, they send the official document that the foreign government needs to sign. Now, our problem is with the Brazil embassy. The Netanyahu chose Dani Dayan. He's a former leader of the settlement, one of the settlement organizations, and how will I put it? Not all the former Israeli ambassadors were happy about this nominations. They claimed that it will cause many problems in foreign community to justify Israeli activities in the territories, and they've sent some fierce letters asking to cancel this nomination.
You know, if we're looking at Dani Dayan is a very intelligent man. Dani Dayan is a very qualified man. Dani Dayan is a professional man, but his views are not, let's say, the consensus in the Israeli, or maybe they are the consensus in the Israeli society. So what is the problem? Why the ambassadors are like against him and don't like this nomination?
Well, Dani Dayan was the head of the Judea and Samaria municipalities. He was the chair of all the municipalities. He's a Likud person. He ran for the Likud during this campaign. He did not succeed in getting into the Knesset. The issue is, it's unheard of that former ambassadors of Israel send a letter of petition to the foreign government to stop a nomination. Moreover, there's a huge debate within the left. Sheli Yachimowicz, former chair of the Labour Party, wrote a Facebook note that she said that she does not like what's going on because Dani Dayan is a qualified person. Now, the issues with Benjamin Netanyahu right now is that he's taking away from the foreign ministry more and more territories. And they don't like it, and because they cannot act upon it because they're civil servants, they call upon former ambassadors to do so. But right now, this system is infuriated with this step.
What I'm trying to think is Benjamin Netanyahu took so many roles into his, let's say, his division that it's almost impossible to control everything. And this, maybe, in one way or another, we saw it coming. How much you can really handle as a Prime Minister of Israel when you have so many problems, especially foreign problems that you need to deal with. Maybe this is a little bit too much. Maybe you need to
I don't think that in this
delegate.
specific... this is a non-debatable issue. For sure, you need to divide the power and trust your manpower and give them the responsibility. But I don't think that in this case he saw it coming. And there's a severe problem by this showcase of lack of unity among the Israeli foreign ministry, and it looks very, very bad from the outside.
I want to take you for a future look. Benjamin Netanyahu will attend the General Assembly just in a few days. What should we expect hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu this time in this speech, after he spoke in front of the Congress, after he really put all of his ideas about Iran on the table, after we understand what he thinks and we know what he thinks about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? What surprises he is preparing for us now,
I think he would like to appease the president. I think he knows the president. He was persona non grata in the White House. I think that he will, now after he said everything, after his words were out there, he does not need to repeat them. I think what he will do is he will come with a very calm, very mellow, very friendly speech. And I think he's going to speak to Obama this time. And I think he's going to try to appease President Obama, whom he knows is very mad at him.
And no drawing, no duck speech, no, like, nothing?
Netanyahu likes the gimmicks, but maybe this time he will pass. I also think that one of the agendas he really likes to talk about is the Arab initiative, the connection with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. Maybe we will hear something about that, but he mainly needs to do some damage control.
He will also speak to the candidates. He will also speak to the major candidates in the race for the presidency.
For the Republicans?
Both of them. He will say something. He will expect some gesture from them to Israel. I think it's going to be a very calm speech if we want to compare it to the previous time.
If we want to anticipate if Trump will continue being in the race, it will be very interesting if he will address Trump, as he will have something to say to Trump, although I have to say that these two people are totally different, and the one is really intelligent and the other one is really intelligent in what he is doing.
I would really like to see a Trump speech at the UNGA.
But one more thing, do you think that really Barack Obama at the end of the day will say, okay, I forgive you, everything is good, let's have a dinner, and it's Yom Kippur, come on guys, it's just like the days of forgiveness.
He's not going to say that. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu really broke all the ceremonial diplomatic notions of patterns of engagement. And I think right now Obama is looking for an apology, which he will not get from Benjamin Netanyahu.
You think also the same?
I agree completely. I don't think it will be a happy ending, but there's a new one coming. Either way you look at it.
Too many hours of Hani Zubaydah you have. You know, I don't like it.
Very, very true. Much less naive.
Much less naive. Thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure. And let's have a drink of wine. The quest for an authentic Israeli grape variety is at the center of research being carried out by the University of Ariel and the Development and Research Center of the Shomron. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapiro went to sample some and returned a little bit tipsy.
The name Yaakov Eini, the profession grape hunter. The mission to locate and collect original authentic Israeli vines in the wild.
We found one grape variety in the southern Negev desert near the border with Egypt. We had to get special permission to access this area since we crossed 3 different firing lines. They're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, where there are only a few milliliters of rain every year. We found several grapevines growing on stairs. We don't know who built the stairs, whether it was the Bedouin or someone else.
Yaakov is a part of a special project led by Dr. Eliashiv Drori from the University of Ariel and the Development and Research Center of the Shomron, who for 3 years has been working to find the original Israeli variety of grapes which were used in the Holy Land for hundreds of years.
Ancient Israel was known for its very
good wines that were exported all over the world. Most of the wine grapes were lost.
Most of the wines in Israel are based on varieties of grapes that are indigenous to Europe. In his research, Drury examines every variety of grape, defines it, and even cross-checks the information with texts from ancient times.
These historical notes, we found the characteristics of each cultivar, not just how the grapes look like and so on, but if the wine is harsh or smooth, if the wine is hard, if the wine is very aromatic.
After the grapes were collected, they are transferred to the lab where Dr. Drury and his crew test each species' DNA in order to match the different varieties and verify they are truly Israeli-based grapes. Another step will be an archaeological DNA match to compare the grapes to grape seeds found in ancient archaeological sites. Apparently, the quest for the holy grapes has borne fruit. According to Dr. Drury, he and his crew found two types of grapes mentioned in Roman times and known for its high quality.
We have two names, the Jandali and Hamdani, that were survived through all history. We have all of the paths of history from the 2nd century into the 16th century mentioning these varieties and their specific characteristics as white wines. One is very harsh and tough, and the other one is very light and elegant.
Science, history, and winery come together in this ambitious project. After the research will be completed, perhaps we'll find out if 1300 BC was a good year. With Shapira I-24 News, Ariel. L'chaim.
This is why you came back so with a big smile that day.
A little bit drunk.
You were a little bit drunk.
Yeah.
Uri Shapira, thank you very much for coming to the studio. Not only that you went and tried to discover some new species, but you also discovered some new parts in history that we didn't know about.
There are a few interesting stories. One of them will be the story about the 12 spies who came to Israel. In the book of Exodus, of course, the biblical story that Moses sent 12 spies to Israel to check the area, and they came back with a huge bunch of grapes, really enormous bunch. It took 2 people to carry it. And actually, Dr. Drury said he found something very similar, a very big bunch of grapes, around 80 centimeters. So
really?
It's really big,
we can actually say that this drawing that we're seeing on the screen can actually be the truth.
Yeah, it could be, there could be a connection.
It's not a story.
Well, you know, it's a mythology, but you know, it's interesting to see the connection. And another story will be the story about Jesus Christ and the Last Supper. Well, according to the New Testament, Jesus had red wine, which he compared to his blood and everything. Now, according to Dr. Drury, most of the chances that Jesus and his followers actually used white wine because red wine wasn't available at that time.
Do you know what that means? It means that like you are just exploding. It just explodes everything that we ever thought.
Won't be upset.
I think that our Christian viewers will. What? It's the red, white, whatever. But you know, I'm looking at the research and I'm looking at this, and I cannot not think about maybe the political aspect of this, that it's very important, and you disagree with me.
I disagree. I think it's mostly has to do with publicity, you know, with marketing. Every country has its own label. You know, the French has the Chardonnay, the Italian has the Chianti wine, even the Australian has the Shiraz. So Israel wants to have its own brand, and I think that's it. You know, every wine collector is reading the label on the wine, and there's a story, and it's a part of the experience, you know, to read the story of the history of the wine. So I think there's a lot of money involved in it.
And I really hope that in the future they won't boycott it. Uri Shapira, thank you very, very much. This is the last time that you're going on the field and coming back drunk. Or it's perfect. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll be here again next week from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have a great night.